Hi, my name is Vanessa van Dijk, and in today's video I'm going to show you how you can use Coriolans Digital Complexion Fluid Foundation. Now at first I would like to go over some general information, and then I want to share with you the entire application, and you will find the timestamps below. Now in total they have 28 shades from very light to extremely dark, and I'm using the shade 012. It has a fluid, lightweight texture which can give you a sheer coverage up to medium and maybe to some extent high coverage depending on how you would like to define it, but it is buildable. And when it comes to the finish itself, it's extremely skin-like, so it does not have the extremely dewy finish nor the completely matte finish. But you can influence this depending on what skincare products you may be using beforehand, or maybe your primer as well, and what makeup products you're going to use afterwards. And so then there you can go ahead and adjust the finish that you like, that you prefer for your overall skin type and preference. And so when it comes to what's important to do before applying the foundation as well as how you can adjust it afterwards, let's look at the PowerPoint slide that I have prepared for you. So it is extremely important to get started with the first step, which is washing your face using a suitable cleanser for your skin and type. Wash your face, rinse it off, pat the skin dry. This way you're making sure that you can remove any excess oil, dirt and sweat from the skin. Then you can move on to a moisturizer and or primer, and make sure that you're going to choose the products that give you the desired finish, so dewy or matte, and that it can help you to smoothen your skin texture. This is an extremely important point that I need to emphasize when working with this foundation, because if that isn't the case, it can settle into your pores and maybe flaky bits that you may have on the skin surface. Because it has such a lightweight texture, this can become quite obvious. So therefore, smoothing the skin texture with skincare products or with maybe your primer is extremely important. And then you're moving on to the application of the foundation. Now there are different methods on how you can work with it, either with a brush, sponge or your fingers. For me personally, I really like working with a brush, and so that's the demonstration that I'm about to share with you. But of course, feel free to adjust it accordingly. I just wouldn't recommend using a damp makeup sponge when using sunscreen underneath, because then this can really get into the risk that it's going to break apart. Therefore, the most secure way would be your fingers or a brush, if that's one of your points that you want to look into. Once you've applied the foundation, you can move on to your concealer if you feel the need. And then lastly, when setting your makeup, it's either with makeup powder or with setting spray. Now I'm going to choose makeup powder, but there you can already play around with the finish as well, if it should be a bit more dewy or even matte. So it is extremely customizable, so therefore I now want to share with you the entire application. So I have the setup right here that I want to do and show you now on camera, so that you can see it visually and the performance of the product. So as you can see, I have some spots on my forehead as well as right here on the side, so that you can see how the coverage performs in case you should have those blemishes as well, or maybe just dark spots such as sun damaged skin in general that you are trying to even out. So we are going to get started with the first step, which is washing your face using a suitable cleanser for your skin type and needs. I have one example right here, which is by Cetaphil. If you should have a different cleanser, that's completely fine. Just make sure to read on the back of the packaging on how you should use your cleanser. In this case, it is advised that you're going to apply the cleanser on wet skin and then you're going to rinse it off. So you can do this above the sink or in the shower, either way is fine. Just make sure that you're going to gently massage a cleanser over your face and neck for about 30 seconds to a minute. And please make sure to not get it into your eyes nor into your mouth, otherwise rinse it with water. So let's go ahead and do this. Use about 1 to 2 pumps, so more or less about a coin size amount. Rub your hands together and then gently massage it all over. Now in between rinsing, you can go ahead and use a soft and fresh washcloth, those makeup cloths or microfiber cloths, which are extremely soft, and you can wet it, then squeeze it out so that it's damp, and then gently use it to swipe it across your face and neck to make sure that you can properly remove your cleanser from the skin and any excess oil, dirt and sweat, especially when doing this above the sink. So now go ahead and take a clean towel and remove the water drops from the skin surface by gently patting it over the skin, not rubbing. So once you're done with your cleansing step, you can move on to the next step, something that can give you the desired finish already, so dewy or matte, and that can help you to smoothen your skin texture. Now I have two examples right here. I have a moisturizer here as well as a primer. Usually with this foundation I like to have a bit more of a dewy finish and it helps me to smoothen my skin texture. Then I usually grab my moisturizer, and so then go ahead, use about a bean size amount. If you're using a primer instead, or you may want to use both, use your moisturizer at first and then use your primer afterwards. And again, of both products you can use more or less about a bean size amount, or use your primer only on the affected area. If you're trying to like smoothen and enlarge pores such as in your T-zone, then that's fine too, to just target that specific point. And then gently and evenly apply it all over. So once you're done with the application of your moisturizer and or primer, you now can move on to the next step, which is the application of the foundation. Now, as already mentioned, the coverage is buildable. Usually I would prefer to go more with a sheer coverage and then just keeping the focus on adding a bit more on those spots that where I feel the need that just a sheer coverage isn't enough. But of course you could also go with a sheer coverage by just using your foundation and then use a separate concealer only on those spots. So it is extremely adjustable depending on your preference, but using the foundation on its own to even out your skin tone is more than enough. And so go ahead and grab the foundation. If you like to, you can give it a like little shake, and then go ahead, as already mentioned, either with a sponge or your fingers or a brush, but the best method that I can recommend to make sure that it will work for everyone, doesn't matter if you're using sunscreen underneath or not, then using the brush or your fingers would be then the best method to follow, because those aren't damp. Whereas with the sponge you're just going to break it apart, if that should be the case for you when using a sunscreen. And so I have two brushes right here as examples, and I want to show you that when using a brush, both are from Zoeva. I have once the buffing brush and I have one face shape brush. So this one has more like of a dome shape, whereas the other one is more flat. The dome shape one I feel like in general do not give as high coverage as like a brush that has a flat surface, but go ahead, of course, adjust it. It should feel comfortable on the skin and should do the performance. But usually with a smaller brush I like to use it if I'm using the foundation only on certain parts where I experience, for example, redness, and this will be mainly the center of my face, usually without the pimples on my forehead, but still this could be the area as well, your T-zone and this part right here. Just to use a smaller brush and just use it on top, and then there you go, maybe around your eyes as well, but you do not have to use the foundation all over. And then with a larger brush I usually use it whenever I prefer to go all over, and then moving from the inside towards the outside so that I have less product around the outside, otherwise it can get stuck into your hairline, which then looks extremely obvious. So go ahead, use your foundation. Either place it on the back of your hand on a mixing palette so that you can pick it up. And then I'm going to go with the smaller brush at first so that you can see the application. So pick up some product and you can first of all stamp it on there and then gently swipe it. So those would be the areas where you can then blend out without using the foundation all over. So, and then there you have it, just a thin layer on the center of my face, and then there you go, by just using a smaller brush. Now of course you could use a larger brush as well, but I feel like the smaller brush works best, especially if you're using it around the eyes or the corner of your nose. But if you now say, well, I just want to use the foundation all over, go ahead and grab a larger brush. And then gently again start from the center and blend outwards. And those brushes usually give you more coverage as well. Now, of course, in between, if you need a bit more product, go ahead and always add it so that you can build up the desired coverage, or maybe just use it on certain areas where you haven't used the foundation. And don't forget to blend it down your neck. Now, when it comes to the certain spots, as you can see on my forehead, this is already like quite well covered. You still can see a bit of redness through, but now I would usually go ahead and use a concealer that has more of a thicker texture, that has more of a high coverage, to just use it on those spots. But it may even not be needed. I mean, it always depends on to what extent it's bothering you. For me, mainly it's about like reducing the redness in general, and when I'm using the foundation, it's more always about the natural finish. I do not like to build it up too much, just so that it can help me to even out the skin tone, especially the redness around my nose parts. Or what you also can do is just take your finger and use it on certain areas by just dabbing it on top where you may just want to add a bit more coverage. So, and then there you go. So you can see that the foundation has some buildable coverage, and you can adjust it with a smaller brush, with your fingers, or even with a larger brush. I just recommend working with the brushes that I'm using myself. So this would be a flat surface brush, like foundation brush, for a bit more of a higher coverage, and a smaller one if you just want to use it on certain spots or maybe around your eyes. And you can always use your finger in between, that's completely fine. And so there you have it. You can see now, based on the moisture that I have used beforehand, that it gives me more of a dewy finish. That's something that I like. Of course, if you have now used a mattifying moisturizer underneath, or like a mattifying primer, then this would look different. It wouldn't be as shiny. But when it comes to now setting it, the major part is you do not need to set your face all over. I mean, if you're using a setting spray, of course you spritz it all over your face and neck. However, if you're working with setting powder, this does not always have to be mattifying powder. There are some powders on the market that have some like shine to it as well to give you that dewiness. Then of course go ahead and adjust it based on the powder. But I always recommend setting the foundation at least around the eyes, and maybe laughing lines if needed, depending on your like overall facial structure. But mainly about where it can crease is where you have a lot of movement. So this would be your eye area as well as your laughing lines, because when doing this all the time and you have more like deeper laughing lines, it can crease. This is just natural. I haven't came across a foundation that does not crease in lines where you have a lot of movement. Therefore, setting it with powder only on those specific areas is at least what I recommend doing. So go ahead, use a small powder brush, or even just use a larger powder brush if you want to use it all over your face. But make sure before you're going to set it with powder to go over your finger, like take your finger, go over those specific areas again, or just use your brush and then dip into the powder and then gently set it so that it's not going to crease. Because it does this as it still has a lot of movement and it hasn't fully set yet, which is difficult if you are going to still move the area. So powder is for sure needed. So you could do the same along the nose, right here, if you should feel the need, and again the eyes, and then there you have it. Still, if you should have more stubborn areas to cover, I always recommend going in with a concealer to really make sure that you can spot conceal those points, rather than building up the foundation over your face and neck to that extent where it may become cakey. So I feel like with using less of the foundation, it gives you a natural and smooth finish. The more you're going to add to it, the more like risky it gets to have like a cakey textured skin, especially if you're using then the powder later on top to set set all those layers. So therefore, use the concealer wisely where you only need it, and use the foundation thinly. That's at least what I can share with you based on my experience of how I've been using the Kryolan foundation. And so if you now want to see how you can use the foundation when having an entire skincare routine, such as toner, essence, serum, moisturizer, and sunscreen, and you want to know the layering and how you can properly apply one after the other, I'm going to link such a video at the end of this video so that you can keep on watching. Now, I do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did so, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up as well as share it, and I will see you soon in the next one. Bye!